Hi, this is Dustin with Pro AV School. In this video, I wanted to show you a little bit about the Crestron Avia and how you would set it up to do some very basic stuff. Some of the methods that you need to use to make this work are simple, but they're quite a bit different than what you might be used to with a different type of DSP. So I'm just going to kind of walk through what it takes to set up something very basic. So in this example here, I've got the Crestron Avia tool and two levels, out 1, out 2, and this is output 1. I'll just actually drag these here because it's easier to see. This is output 2. This is an X panel, so a touch panel object basically, and I guess that's why I didn't do that, because it'll cover it in Windows. So you can see here, if I drag and adjust this, it's changing this level. It's also changing that meter pretty much right on the fly, you can see. And I'm just running a signal generator through it, so that's why it's not moving too much. This one I didn't actually connect the level. You can also see it's not here, but you can adjust it here, and you can adjust it here. Now the reason these two gauges look differently, this one's fat, this one's thin, is just the properties with how it's set up in VT Pro E. So now I'm going to show you basically how I did this. So basically from the start, I've opened up my Crestron Avia tool, and I'm going to add a new network DSP. It's already live and online on my network. I'm going to discover it on Ethernet, and it's come up here with an IP address. I'm going to pick that, add selected device, and then if I click on it, it asks me if I want to connect to it. So I click OK, and now it's going to go through and try to connect to the DSP. Let's give it a minute here for it to load everything up. And here's the basic system view of the Avia DSP. This unit here I have is DSP 1283. You can see its IP address, and I believe that would be its serial number there. And all I'm basically going to do is make sure that I've got a signal generator routed to an output, and then tie the outputs, export the UI controls for the outputs. So I'm actually going to go into, I believe it's the strips view. Just zoom that out here. See the generator here. And I've already got that set up. One thing that I should mention here, in system, most DSPs you would consider this a route from input 1 to an output. This is more of a mute. You got to make sure that that doesn't screw you up. And in strips here, you can adjust the different levels. The intent of this video is not to show you everything about Avia, because honestly I don't know everything about Avia. I'm just starting to experiment with it. I just found that it's kind of complex, thinking about it differently, and so I just wanted to show pretty basically how to hook up what I demonstrated there. So I got signal generator mute off. I'm doing pink noise at 0 dB, and this level here goes to output 1, analog out 1, analog out, and minus 15 dB. To modify these levels, you right click, and you can adjust the level here. So I'm just going to leave that to about minus 18. Sure, looks good. And I'm also going to do it to output 2 because I didn't have that before. I'm going to copy and right click and paste. One of the things I don't like about this tool is there's no way to actually discretely set. Actually, I'm wrong. There is a way to discretely set the level. I guess if you right click it, it lets you type it in. Is it a single click? Yeah, I think it's a single click. Lets you set it. Double click mutes it. And I think right click is what I did to get this level bar. So anyways, I've got these two things routed, and if I look over at the outputs, there's actually a way to get rid of a bunch of this junk. Get rid of auxiliary, phone, Dante, and just see the outputs. And then if I look at here, See, I've got a level on this output and also a level on this output. So now what I'm going to do is go to the UI export and find the controls that I actually want to export. And I think I'll do this too. I'm going to export the generator block. Just going to click on it and drag it over here. And I guess that's not something that you can export. So I'm going to click here. See, it highlights it there in white. Actually going to open that up. This one I'm going to open up too. And I'm going to click this control. Sorry, I'm going to control click this control. It highlights it. Control click this control, and this control. And then I'm going to drag them. Sorry, control click and drag them over to there. And you could give them a discrete name. I'm going to leave the default because that doesn't really matter what they are anyways for this demo. I'm going to add the controls there. And then File, Save UI Export. And I'll call it My Export, just so it's a differentiator. Now I'm going to go over to VT Pro. I'm actually going to delete what I had before because it's not relevant. And this is basically just a very simple TSW 760 project. I'm going to right click and go Import Devices. Navigate to myexport.dsx. Open that and add file as new DSP because I'm just going to overwrite that basically. It's warning me that some stuff is going to be removed. That's fine. And then to find those controls, under the Smart Graphics control browser here, I expand this, and here I have the level for output 1 and the VU meter for output 1, the level for output 2, and the VU meter for output 2. I think if I had named those, it would carry in some default names here, but we didn't do that. You can override them by typing in there. Use override label, sure. Out 2. And you can change different parameters of these controls as you might be able to with the regular Smart Graphics object. So now I'm going to save that, compile it. Then I'm going to switch over to SIMPL. Now over in SIMPL Windows, this is a basic program for an RMC3. And I'm going to create a touch panel, TSW 760, and then at 04, actually 09, I'm going to do the DSP, which is a DSP 1283. Now in the program view, there's some stuff that I need to fill in. First thing that I'm going to do is manage Smart Graphics extenders and browse for that compiled VTP. Commit my changes. And you see that it automatically inserted this device and tied it into a DSP routing module. Now the other one was already there from the last time. I just actually deleted these behind the scenes. So I'm going to make sure that I don't screw myself up here. I'm going to delete this other one. So there's only one. You won't have to do that. So that's still connected. Just making sure that everything's still good. Now the things that I'm going to need to do with this Avia is the Ethernet offline manager. I need a signal called DSP offline because that is required for the routing module. This routing module got dropped in automatically. The DSP offline, And the only two signals that I also need to connect are the CRPC, which is Crestron's protocol for kind of encapsulated data, so you don't have to manage a bunch of different signals. There's data to the DSP and from the DSP. So normally what I do with signals like this, especially for a mock-up, if you double-click and click away, or Control-Shift-B could also do it to auto-complete signals, because I just want to use basically that name. I don't care about S1. And then under the System tab of the DSP, this is where I need to fill these in to DSP, and then from DSP. And that's basically all you need to do. So I'm going to compile this now. I've got my SIMPL set to transfer manually. A lot of times I'll use FTP to actually do the transfer. Just going to load it to program slot 1 here. While that's loading, I'm going to start up or switch over to VTP, and I'm just going to run this as an X panel here. Now you can see this is grayed out because it was offline, and then it became active because it went back online. So here is my control, and I'll bring up my Avia side by side here so you can see level 1 with the actual level following pretty closely, and level 2. So that's basic, very simple integration with the Avia DSP. Some of the limitations that I see just from this initial test is if you have multiple touch panels, it might be a little bit weird, kind of restricting who can control the level last and stuff like that. You'd have to figure out how that should work. You can't really manage it as you could in a regular program. Also, with my DSPs, I like to sometimes limit user range to maybe minus 60 dB up to maybe minus 10 dB or even 0. Sometimes giving people plus 10 and minus 80 is a little bit more adjustable range than they really need. I've also noticed that you can't really see levels for everything. You can only export the levels from analog outputs. So if you wanted to see levels from different things, I guess you could probably see them from the inputs too. But if you wanted to see levels for things coming in from Dante or something, you'd probably need to route them to spare analog outputs and then import those, export those. So I'm going to do another video or two about the initial things with Avia, and keep tuned to this channel for other things related to programming. Pro AV School has kind of switched over to largely dealing with Crestron programming these days. That's kind of what my focus has been. I've got a Crestron Basics Bootcamp that you can sign up for if you're interested. It's a paid course, but it goes through kind of going start to finish with a somewhat basic Crestron program and shows how I would approach it. You can find out more at proavschool.com/bootcamp.